Hey, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory that's due to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakudash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, who all in this Juvenile will do well. Peace and salutations to the 144,000 and the rest of the elect. Unto you I say shalom. Coming to you back with another lesson through the Spirit, and I'm entitled this one, They shall not regard their kings nor princesses. Meaning, all these Americans, these Babylonians, is to the point that they're fed up with their government. They're fed up with their own police departments throughout every major city. They're fed up with these ICE agents. They're fed up with these different mayors and different officials throughout the country, because now they're seeing that all these so-called leaders from these different cities, counties, states, governments, up until the very top, the president, DJ Trump, Nero 47, now they're understanding that these officials, these leaders, these governors, that they're not for the people, that really they have their own best interests and ultimately the interests of the elite banking families, from the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the DuPonts, so on and so forth. And now they're waking up to the fact that, we're just working to fatten the pockets of the elites, Ukraine and Israel. And these people are fed up. They're like, what the hell are we working for? You're over here killing Americans, and what happened with the Minneapolis situation a couple days ago. So people, these Americans, especially the red-blooded Edomites, they're fed up. They're fed up with their own government. That ultimately is going to lead to civil war. Is going to lead to the collapse of America. Because here you had a movie called Civil War, released a couple of years back, that's letting you know that ultimately Esau Edom is the one that's stirring up the minds of these people, because Esau Edom, the self-proclaimed white man, he wants these Americans to fight amongst each other. Going back to that whole divide and conquer, because if you have these Americans fighting amongst themselves, then it's going to be a cakewalk when these foreign troops, the UN troops, these splinter cells get activated. It's going to be nothing for them to just take out these Babylonians, because really majority of these Americans, they're docile as all hell. That's why they're still going to work, still paying taxes, as long as they have their Netflix and their one-bedroom apartment and McDonald's and DoorDash, and these Americans are never going to revolt. But once Esau Edom takes that away, then that's when these Babylonians, these Americans, are going to lose it. When you take their food supply away, when you take their bread and circus away, that's when these Babylonians, Americans, are going to finally lose it. And now that they're losing their mind, because now they're understanding that all these officials that are not for them, that they never had the interests of the so-called American citizen. This is 2 Ezra chapter 15 and verse 14. Woe to the world and them that dwell therein. So woe to the world, to this current world, this current age, all these Americans, these Babylonians, and all the people scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. This great destruction, Jacob's trouble, is ultimately for the wicked of our people, the Israelites, the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, and wherever Israel is scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. But also these heathens, these so-called white people, so-called Arabians, so-called Chinese. This is for who the great destruction and judgment is coming for. Verse 15, for the sword and the destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. And what's the modern day sword? The gun. And where the largest concentration of guns, where every citizen has like 3 to 5 weapons, is here in America. That's why ultimately Esau Edom hasn't just took over like that here in America, because these Babylonians, these Americans, are armed. You know, especially the Edomite. Motherfucker got a closet full of AK-47s and all these different guns that he's getting ready to use on these so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. But not just that, he's getting ready to use it amongst his own people against these Edomites. It's gonna be Edomite versus Edomite, Republican versus Democrat, left versus right. Just like in the Purge movie, who were the main targets? So-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. Verse 16, for there shall be sedition among men, invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. And you have this going around the world. Over there in Iran, you know, people are fed up with their government. France, and really what stopping is these Babylonians, these Americans from revolting is that they're so damn docile. You know, they don't care because this is the land of unwalled villages. People don't care here. People, as long as they have their McDonald's and Starbucks and they're able to go to work and get a paycheck, then, you know, they're not worried about nothing. You know, they see what's going around the world. You know, the U.S. taking over Venezuela, but like, man, I don't care. As long as that's not in my front doorstep, then I don't care. And then you got the Northern Kingdom, you know, so-called Mexicans, Issachars. You know, here you got eyes riding around, you know, taking the Northern Kingdom, but they don't give a damn. They're still out here wiggling around like nothing serious. So ultimately, our people, they don't take nothing serious because they see that everything's so-called normal. You know, people still going to work, people still going to the grocery stores and doing their day-to-day routines. That's why these Americans, these Babylonians, is going to hit them so hard, because they're so used to so-called normal. But when shit hits the fan, when all hell breaks loose, it's going to hit them really hard. And that's when, you know, you're going to have riots in the streets. You're going to have people in all these downtowns, you know, rioting, causing havoc. And that's when Esau, Edom, is going to be justified in sending the military in, sending those reserves, the army reserves, you know, whatever military reserves they got ready, you know, for all this chaos that is about to unfold. But that's ultimately what Esau, Edom wants. He wants these people to revolt so he can be justified on imposing martial law. Verse 17, a man shall desire to go into the city and shall not be able. Going into those checkpoints, going into when the MOTB gets made mandatory, if you don't have that charagma, you won't be able to go into the 15-minute cities if you don't take that RFID micro CHIP, which is the MOTB, written about in Revelation chapter 13 and verse 16. This is what's about to come up on the planet Earth. But that ultimately, that's the plan of Esau, Edom. He wants these people to cause havoc so he can be justified. And okay, everybody has to be identified. Everybody has to have this micro RFID CHIP. Verse 18, for because of their pride, the cities shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. So it's going to be a famine out here. It's going to be pestilence. It's going to be people getting put to death left and right. People, you know, they're not going to regard whatever relationships they had amongst their neighbors, amongst their families. No, they're going to be like, oh, hell, now he got food. You know, he got water. Now we got to go to his house and take his shit. Verse 19, a man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation. So that's what it's going to take these Americans, these Babylonians, to revolt. When Esau, Edom takes that food away, when those 18-wheelers, those food trucks aren't going out, when those shipping containers are just sitting down in the oceans, that's when these Americans, these Babylonians, are going to finally revolt. Because as long as these people have bread and circus, you know, they're 9 to 5, they're able to go out on the weekends, then they're chilling. They're not worried about Jacob's trouble. They're not worried about World War III. They're not worried about Trump invading all these countries, because to them, it don't seem important, because ultimately they're not measuring the times diligently. This is Revelation chapter 12 and verse 12. Therefore rejoice ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. And that's ultimately going into the elect of the nation of Israel. they're the ones who are rejoicing to the fact that this is all going on. We see prophecy unfolding, popping out the pages, while the rest of the world is like, damn, mourning, bugging the hell out because of what's going on. But not the elect. The elect are going to be rejoicing that all this is happening while the rest of the world is bugging the hell out. These Edomites, these 2/3 Jakes, it says, woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil, which is ultimately Esau, Edom, the self-proclaimed white man, the deceiver of the world, is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he had but a short time. And that's why Esau, Edom, is sending out all these psyops, people getting deleted by officials and agents, because he wants the minds of these people to be stirred up, so he could be justified in LOCK down everything again like he did in 2020, putting all these different checkpoints, having everybody have a mandatory digital I to the D. Because Esau, Edom, he sees what's going on the in the heavens, with the chariots popping out left and right. This devil's scared. That's why he has to speed the things up. He had Trump 6 years ago, 2020, Operation Warp Speed. Because this devil knows that he don't have as long. He sees everything that happening around the world, the signs in the heavens. He's seeing up the chariots up close. So this devil knows that his time of ruling is just about up. So he has to speed things up. This is Matthew chapter 12 and verse 25 in the NLT. And it reads, Yahweh Shai knew their thoughts and replied, any kingdom divided by civil war is doomed. A town or family splintered by feuding will fall apart. And ultimately, it is to that boiling point. Civil war is right around the corner. It is basically here with everything that's going on. You have so much going on around the world. You have Trump invading countries and just taking the hell over, taking the resources. This is ours now. You have ICE agents killing their own citizens when they're supposed to take Jake out. These Edomites, their blood is boiling. You got the average person working 9 to 5, tired as all hell, because they're just constantly working, barely making ends meet. And what for? The inflation keeps rising. People are fed up with this place. So eventually these people are going to just burst. They're going to burst. They're going to lose all their marbles. They're going to bug the hell out completely and just go psycho. And the scriptures go into that. The hearts of many shall wax cold. That word cold in Greek, that's going into psycho, which means, you don't care how people, get taken down. You don't care what happens to people. And that's what these Babylonians, Americans, they're already selfish, only worried about themselves. They're not worried about, it's average, or, your average neighbor next door. No, these Americans, they're only worried about themselves. Verse 26, and if Satan is casting out Satan, he is divided and fighting against himself. His own kingdom will not survive. And that's what's happening. You got Trump about to invade all these different countries. He's going to take Greenland. If that happens, NATO's done dealing with America. Their treaty's going to be ripped apart. Going into that Satan being divided against himself. And not just among these lower luminaries, but also at the very top, these wicked elite banking families, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, they're divided amongst themselves. So ultimately, Esau, Edom's kingdom is done. Yahweh Bashmiel Shai is putting up on the spirit of these devils to stir up havoc, because this devil's just about to be taken out of his power seat and get taken down. But that's pretty much the point. Praise, this is edifying to the elect. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory that's due to Yahweh. Ba Hashem Yahweh Shai. Ba Hashem Rakak Dash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, calling this truth from who drew well. Peace and salutations to the 144,000 and the rest of the elect. Unto you I say shalom.